Can you teach empathy? Or is it temperamental? Are you born with empathy? There's a fairly large body of evidence to suggest that teaching empathy is not just possible, but is a large part of it. There's probably a temperamental piece to it, but, you know, empathy is a good thing. Empathy, the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, the ability to imagine what somebody else's life must be like. That's you know, kind of a shorthand description of empathy. And the lack of empathy in the United States is becoming really problematic. You know, since the Reagan Revolution, where we went from being, we're all in this together society, from the 1930s until the early 1980s, we were operating under the New Deal, you know, under FDR's economics, and the cornerstone, the key idea, as it were, of FDR's economic system was, well, and political system and social system and everything else, was we're all in this together. We're all citizens of the United States. We're all part of this. We're all in this thing together. And then Reagan came along and said, we're not all, you know, all in this thing together. That we are talking about, that's government. That's the problem. We have to get rid of the we and start thinking in terms of me. And as a result, over the last 40 years, this is from a piece by Jessica Alexander, published over at salon.com, titled Teaching Kids Empathy. She notes that some studies show empathy levels have dropped up to 40% in the United States in the last 30 years, while narcissism is on a steady rise. Now, why would that be, and why would it be that we're about to elect or consider electing, we are considering electing as President of the United States, a clear narcissist in Donald Trump, who's, you know, who actually, I mean, this guy is such a narcissist and such a, so lacking in empathy that he thinks that making jokes about assassinating Hillary Clinton is going to help his campaign because it gets his name in the news cycle more. You know, who cares what happens to Hillary Clinton in Trump world? I mean, literally, as they say up at the top of DU today in their graphic, the party of Lincoln has become the party of John Wilkes Booth. So how do we teach empathy? Well, this piece by Jessica Alexander, she's an expat, she's an American citizen who lives in Denmark, and she wrote a book called The Danish Way of Parenting, What the Happiest People in the World Know About Raising Capable, Confident Kids. And she points out that in the Danish education system, now every school in Denmark is basically the same. Unlike the United States, they don't rely on a property tax, and they don't have, you know, and therefore local poor communities have local poor, fairly crappy schools, and local rich communities have really fancy, high output, productivity, whatever you want to call it, high success rate schools. Instead, you know, pretty much every school in Denmark is the same, and they work very well. I mean, keep in mind, Denmark is a democratic socialist country. The United States has, at least since Reagan, I mean, before Reagan, we didn't use the phrase democratic socialism, but we certainly called ourselves the New Deal Society. We called ourselves America. We called ourselves Americans. We were proud of our government. We were proud of the TVA. We were proud of sending a man to the moon. We were proud of the things that we've accomplished throughout this country. You know, we acknowledge, you know, our shortcomings and our failings and you know, a nation birthed in genocide and everything else. But as you know, up until 1980, we at least, you know, our government and the things that it could do were by and large beloved. And then Reagan came along and said, oh, no, you're supposed to hate the government. The government is really just there to facilitate commerce so billionaires can get rich and run the army and the police so that nobody can take the billionaires' stuff from them. Oh, and run the court system, pay for the court system so that the billionaires can facilitate all their business deals. So what they do in Denmark, again, this is a learned skill. And in fact, she notes, Jessica Alexander notes, Denmark is consistently voted one of the happiest countries in the world. Empathy plays a key role in improving social connections, which is a major factor in overall happiness. So I guess my question is Republican/libertarian sneering about empathy and holding up selfishness as the top virtue? This was, Ayn Rand 101, Paul Ryan 101. Selfishness is the most important virtue. This is the mantra of the Republican Party. It is the mantra of Ayn Rand's books that Paul Ryan used to require his staffers to read, Atlas Shrugged, and The Fountainhead, where the woman gets raped and decides she likes it, all that weird. I mean, Ayn Rand was like one sick, twisted puppy. So anyhow, in their book, she writes, we describe several empathy programs for younger kids. Most interesting is a program that starts on the first day of school. By the way, kids in Denmark go to school from the time they're 6 until the time they're 16. And at 16, they have better outcomes from their schools than we do at 18. Anyhow, it starts on the first day of school, 6 years old, continues until graduation at age 16. It's called Klassentime, or the classes hour. It's a special time once a week. It's a core part of the curriculum. Every school does this. And all the students come together in a comfortable setting to talk about the problems they may be having. I'm quoting from Jessica Alexander here. Together, the class tries to find a solution. This could be an issue between two students or a group or even something unrelated to school at all. And then along with this comes the Klassentime Keg, class hour cake. It's a simple cake that the students take turns baking every week. So they get together, they bake a cake, and they spend an hour talking about problems. And one of the young women, this is a high school student from Stror, Annie Milkison, she says, I remember when we were 10 or 11, we often talked about girl cliques. That was a common topic, and we'd discuss it and try to solve it together. Sometimes that just meant the girls being more aware and trying to interact more with others, but it always helped us to talk about it together. One of the teachers, Jesper Vang, middle school teacher at Tingarsol in Odense, says, our job as a teacher is to make sure that the children understand how the others feel and see why the other feels as they do. That way we can come up with a solution based on real listening and real understanding. So has capitalism, at least the raw, naked, unvarnished, unregulated form of capitalism that Republicans want us to practice in the United States, that we do to some extent? But when Donald Trump talks about cutting, last night he was saying, we're going to cut 70% of regulations. Right. No more seatbelts, no more cars that are crash safe. The Koch brothers paper plants, Georgia Pacific, they can pump all the toxins they want into the air. The Koch brothers refineries pump all the poisons you want into the air. Coal plants around the country, you don't have to worry about that fly ash. Let it blow all over those poor communities of color where you tend to cite these things. Right, we're gonna get rid of regulations because who gives a damn about anybody else? It's all about me, right? This is the Republican worldview. This is the Trump worldview. You want somebody who doesn't have empathy? Donald Trump. I mean, look up, lack of empathy in the dictionary. There's Trump's picture. He doesn't care how frightened Hillary Clinton may be now that basically he's put an assassination threat on her. And don't try to tell me it was a joke. He was talking about after the election, when she's president, and she's nominating Supreme Court justices. That is not a time when people vote. The NRA is trying to spin this thing. Donald Trump is trying to spin this thing. But there's no empathy there. There's no humanity there. This is not a good thing for the United States. And actually, I've got some more on this, but this is more evidence of why we need to repudiate Reaganism.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
All the various dimensions of Reaganism, including the Reaganistas who Trump has put on his panel of economic advisors, which I'll talk about in a minute.
To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.